Dracula Prince of Darkness is the direct sequel to Horror of Dracula. It takes place about 10 years after the events of Horror of Dracula. And in this film, there are a group of travelers from outside of the country who have come into this town and are looking for refuge, and they eventually go traveling outside the town and accidentally stumble upon this castle and decide to take refuge there. And it turns out this is Castle Dracula, and one of Dracula's servants are waiting there for them, and the castle is basically prepared for them, and it's all sorts of weird stuff going on. And of course, one of them ends up getting sacrificed and used to bring Dracula back, and Dracula starts picking them off one by one in this sort of haunted house type feel of a movie. This movie is once again directed by Terrence Fisher, and in a lot of ways I think that this is better directed and even better to look at than Horror of Dracula. I think that we get to see more of Dracula's castle, and the castle itself is almost a character. And I really love the sets in this movie. I mean, it was super creepy. I wasn't particularly scared by Horror of Dracula, and Prince of Darkness didn't necessarily scare me either, but there were parts where I was genuinely creeped out by some of the set design and just the overall look of it, because it's a very strange place. And I did watch the UK version, and that's my preferred version because you get to see more of the sets. The US version is very dimmed down, it's very dark. You're not missing that much as far as like content. And this sequel does up the gore and shock even more than the first one. I will say that I think that this is a superior sequel in some aspects. It's certainly better. I think it is better directed, and I like the sets a lot more, and it's got more atmosphere. However, hardly any of the characters are likable. They're pretty much all throwaways. They might as well be teenagers in a slasher film, and I couldn't give a shit about any of them really. The only character that I liked was the priest character. He's this sort of guy who has not necessarily turned his back on God, but has turned his back on some of the traditions. Like, he's very blunt, he's very rigid. And my favorite part is when he goes into this tavern to rest, and he's like, man, I'm really cold. So he hikes up his robe and stands by this fire to warm himself up, and I just found that absolutely hilarious. And once again, Christopher Lee is great as Dracula. He has no lines in this movie, and there's two reasons for that, and it's one of the two. According to Lee, it's because the dialogue in the movie that was written for his character was so bad that he just straight up said, I'm not going to say any of those, I'm just going to snarl and act through expressions and body movement, which he does extremely well in this movie. He is just a presence. Even when Dracula doesn't show up, he's a presence. Or number two, the writer says that he never actually wrote any dialogue for Dracula. So, I mean, we don't know which version is true. And unfortunately, there is something missed where he's not having that back and forth with Peter Cushing. But I think this is a solid sequel overall. I enjoyed watching it. It was fun to watch. I think it's on par with Horror of Dracula. I think Horror of Dracula has better characters, but I think Prince of Darkness has more atmosphere. And, you know, most people, if they pick a favorite from this series, it's one of the first two movies, and I could see why. Again, I will be doing all of the Christopher Lee Dracula movies throughout the entirety of February. My books are available on ebook and paperback. Thanks always for watching. Bye.